That's great, Tanya. Thanks so much. I'll once you start the live stream, I can like and retweet it. So
Okay, we are live. Hey, Brent, the mic is yours. You can start the space. I'll start tweeting from my other side.
What, Tanya?
I said we're ready to go. We're live right now.
So you want me to open the space?
Yep, and start. So just know, full disclosure, if you grab the microphone, know that we're going to be reusing the audio and also be live streaming and promoting it. I'm going to put it on a headliner so I can have the whole conversation transcribed as we go along.
amazing, amazing.
I mean, like, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right?
100%, especially if you have me on as a guest, because I preach about accessibility and universal design. So making sure that there's transcription and all of that, and everyone can feel included, is a huge plus for me.
Transcriptions are important. I actually enjoy reading when I'm watching something. I like to be able to see the words.
100%, yeah, it's good for anybody, even if you're not English first language. Just being able to read and see the words as somebody's speaking is fantastic.
Okay, Brent, the mic is yours. Look who's in the space, Bunsen and Beaker.
Okay. This Twitter space is called Disability Hour, and I started it so that I could feature other disability guests and bring awareness to to people about different disability topics. And Tanya is my co-host, and her her channel Social Chats of Florida sponsors my space, and I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure. Your success is my success. So excited about the space.
And I'm happy to have Marco Pasqua here as the guest. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, Marco?
Sure, yeah, we're diving right into it. Thanks, Brent. So yeah, my name is Marco Pasqua. I am an accessibility consultant and inspirational speaker by trade. I've been doing professional inspirational speaking and traveling the globe as a speaker for the better part of over 10 years now. But really, I've been an advocate for accessibility and universal design my entire life. I'm a person who was born with a disability. I have cerebral palsy, and I use a manual wheelchair to get around the majority of the time. And for me, having conversations like this that are candid, that are honest, and most importantly, authentic, are very important, because it's very easy for us to hide behind a veil or an avatar on social media and pretend to be someone we're not. And I've always been a huge advocate of going out there and being the same person digitally as you are in person, and really kind of building meaningful relationships with people. So the fact that I get to do that as a speaker and as an accessibility consultant, and opening people's eyes to the importance of universal design, and that it's not just meant for people with disabilities, but it's actually to create spaces that are inclusive of everyone and ready for everyone, whether you're 9 or 90 years old, is super, super important to me. So when you asked me if I would be willing to come on as a guest to the show, without question, I said yes, absolutely. Is there something specific that you want to kind of dive right into, Brent? I'm ready to be in the hot seat. Just for full disclosure for everybody, I was not emailed any questions or anything like that in advance. I actually kind of like it that way. I really like being put in the hot seat, and I really enjoy the opportunity to, just answer questions authentically. So whatever you've got for me, I'm ready for it.
Well, the first uh, the first question that I wanted to ask you, uh, uh, how do you, what, what do you think, what's your definition of disability?
Oh, wow. Starting right out the gate with a very interesting question. So, I mean, my definition of disability is it's kind of an interesting one. It's a little bit complex because, I think that there's a lot of sort of polarity in the disability community with the kind of reference of person first language versus identity first language. So, person with a disability versus disabled person. And so let me kind of cover that first. So, I want to start off by saying that I'm absolutely proud to be a person with a disability because being a person with a disability, in my perspective, means that you're putting the person first. You're remembering that regardless of any challenges that someone might have, that at the end of the day, no matter how we may be different, we're all people. And whereas identity first, which is used a lot in the UK and in a lot of literature, that is, disabled person. And that's more of the sense of pride of, yeah, absolutely. I'm putting the word disabled first. But I do want to preface that just because you have a disability doesn't necessarily mean you're disadvantaged. And I think that, anytime you put any of the words that have represented the disability community over the years, it really comes down to your intention behind the use of those words. So do you have malicious intent when you say them or use them? Or do you have, do you have a level of empathy and compassion towards people? So my definition of the word disability, I think it really varies. I think that in general, it means that you do things a little bit different than the status quo, than the average person, but it doesn't necessarily have to be framed as a disadvantage. It just means that the perspectives that you share with the world are through the lens of a person with a disability. And in some cases, in many cases, that can actually be an advantage in life and in the work that you do, because you're not seeing things from a homogenous lens of just one perspective. So I hope that wasn't too shifty of an answer for you, but for me, it really is unique to each individual.
The next thing that I wanted to ask you about, and I know that Tanya will enjoy this question. Tanya has been in communications since 2006, and she has her own PR agency, and she produces press releases. And the next question is, I maybe some tips on how to accessible content.
Oh, wow. So are you talking about strictly digital content, or are you talking like content that you're, say, having available for people when you put on an event, that kind of thing?
Both types of content, because Tanya is also the president of Women in Communication, the South Florida chapter, and she hosts in-person
Amazing.
events.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, well, Tanya, you'll love this. So, first and foremost, before we went officially live, we were talking about how transcription is so important. And transcription is so important simply because it's not just for people who may be deaf or hard of hearing, and then they're able to kind of read what's being discussed, but it also allows individuals who may have anxiety or ADHD or other forms of disabilities that they would really like to review content at a later time, at their own speed, at their own leisure. That's an opportunity where transcriptions really come into play, especially if you're having a key meeting or an event where there's some awesome quotes or takeaways that you want to have. Having those transcriptions means you can easily copy and paste those amazing quotes or sound bites from people later on in written format. And in that regard, I'm a huge advocate of closed captioning that is hard coded or hard baked into video exports. So if you're doing any marketing material, it's very easy for somebody to toggle on and off closed captioning, but sometimes it's hard to find the button, the closed captioning button. And closed captioning through artificial intelligence isn't always the greatest when it comes to identifying the speaker and or the punctuation and the types of punctuation, especially if there are acronyms involved. So if you do have marketing materials in a digital space that you want to ensure captures the attention of everyone, especially in this TikTok age where everyone's attention span seems to get shorter and shorter, what I suggest to people is have your materials on video hard baked with captions so that there's no way to toggle them on and off. And as a plus to that, it means that when people are scrolling through their social media, like on Twitter, they're actually more likely to stop on your tweet or your video because you're going to be one of the few people where words and the things that you're saying in that video are actually standing out to people. And they're all of a sudden going to be like, accessibility? What was he talking about here? An event on which date? And I've found that even if you're not tailoring your materials to a deaf or hard of hearing audience, this is really good. When it comes to physical events and spaces, you can continue to practice what you preach by being able to have any of the materials like the pamphlet or agenda for the day, allowing them to, first and foremost, for guests to, when they're registering or RSVPing, to identify if they have any accessibility needs or if there's any accessibility considerations that would make them feel like they could fully participate in the event. That's a really great way of wording it so that people could not only tell you if they're a wheelchair user and they like specific area of seating, and some people obviously have poor vision or they'd like to be closer or further away depending on the acoustics. But it also allows you to include in your little takeaway bags and things like this alternative print material. So if somebody does have low vision or they need in large print, you can have several copies of that agenda printed out in large copy or large font. You can also find local vendors who offer brailing services so that if there is anyone who's blind in the group or in the audience who does happen to read Braille, and obviously it's beneficial if they let you know that in advance, then you can include those things. Making sure that people feel included in the spaces and the places that we live, work, play, and learn tells them, without saying even that many words, that you're wanted here, you're expected here, we want you here, and your voice and your presence is valued. And I think that that goes a long way for many, many people. You don't necessarily have to tote around saying, we are a disability-focused event. No, the point behind universal design, it means that regardless of who you are, you can enter a space and, regardless of your ability and how you're able to function in that space, the way in which each of the rooms, technology, and the way that the people are intended to be interacted with can be done so by anyone who enters without them having to adapt to the environment. The environment should adapt to the people, not the people to the environment. And I do know that we have a long way to go here. In the States, Tanya, where you're from, you've had the Americans with Disabilities Act now since the early 90s. And that was a really good benchmark for the built environment and built environment accessibility. But there's a lot of things that you can do that go above and beyond code standard to really reach that gold standard to ensure that people feel included. And even here in Canada, where I live, so I'm on the west coast of Canada, we only had the Accessible Canada Act enacted, get this everybody, in 2019. Okay, so we're just in 2023. We waited very pragmatically, very Canadian of us, to wait on bated breath to see how we could make improvements to the built environment. And I have to tell you, as an accessibility professional, I'm really excited to sink my teeth into helping to shape the way that we look at accessibility and universal design in my country.
I love everything you're saying. I was going to also add to this too, but and I noticed too that I think we have a law in the for I don't know when that everyone has to be doing this, because that's what I'm doing. I'm researching because there's actually plugins for websites for WordPress to make your website accessible. There's like a little blue button on the bottom left corner, and you click it, and so I'm looking into that for myself. But
Nice.
I feel like, what are your thoughts on today where, now with the metaverse, because my company I started out in 2006 as a communication / PR social media. Now I'm looking at more of experiential marketing, creating events in real life, but also the virtual events too. So and of course you would have teams working with you, but I feel like now with Web3, it's giving so much opportunity and it's so accessible for everybody. What are your thoughts on? Have you experienced a metaverse event? Have you gone to one? To a virtual one?
No, I haven't gone. So I've gone to other virtual events before the metaverse was really a thing. Not through the metaverse, but by third-party organizations that were trying things out when VR was kind of in its infancy. I will say that we have a lot to wait on for the metaverse to really excite me, and there's reasons behind that. There's so much accessibility concerns that we have to do in the real world as it currently stands, that it seems like it's a bit of a distraction to put all of our time and attention into a virtual world when we haven't quite yet fixed our real world yet. So as a, I don't know if you know this about me, Tanya, but I actually do have a degree in video game design, and my background is actually in video game design, and I spent 5 years in the beginning of my career as at Electronic Arts, working for the studio. So I have a real appreciation for technology, for VR, and for AR, experiences. I think I'm going to put more of my money on augmented reality as opposed to virtual reality. And there's a few components and reasons behind that. Number one is with augmented reality, what you're doing is you're putting a veil of technology that can be customized based on a person's needs that is right in front of their face. And so you're using the accessibility benefits or features of the real world in front of a person, not putting them in danger, while also superimposing things like new menus and things where if they have a lack of range of motion, say in their arm movement, that you could move buttons and user controls anywhere in a 360 space to make it easier for someone to interact in an environment. Whereas in a virtual space, you're truly limited by what you're able to do, both physically, if it involves movement or movement of joysticks. And really, it doesn't solve the issue of accessibility from a number of different fronts. There's so many different factors here that I think that we're just getting too excited to dive right into the metaverse. But I do think that you've got, like, for example, there's the manufacturer of the Nreal glasses. And I've seen some of the work of Nreal. I think it's really, really cool because they look almost like a pair of Ray-Bans that you can use as actual sunglasses, but they offer like a 200-inch screen in front of your face, as well as various other applications of things that you can plug into your phone, into your PC. It's very transferable. It's not as clunky as the headsets that you see through the metaverse. So I honestly think that mass adoption of something like the metaverse is going to take some time. It's going to take financial affordability because it's out of reach right now for people. I've heard that Zuckerberg is thinking about offering the headsets for free or subsidized in order to get buy-in and get adoption, into that space. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. I think we need to find a way in which we can use mixed reality where we're not completely dependent on the technology, but we can still have our own benefits. Or say, for example, we live in a home that's fairly adapted. We have grab bars, we have various things that make our life easier. If we're able to still interact out in our physical space without being impeded by this technology, in addition to using technology to give us skills, powers, and abilities that are beyond anything we could experience in a typical conference or environment, then you would have me sign up and be on board for that. I guess it's a long-winded answer,
No,
but I hope it.
no, I totally agree with you. Actually, I'm not. I put on my first glasses in 2015. I was excited. I bought it, and it was just a plain old. It wasn't even an Oculus or anything. And then I've never I became a designer, like I guess what you call it, because I got into the Horizon, which is the AR of Facebook, which I enjoyed, and then I got into the let's see, hold on, this Sparks is the AR, Horizon is the VR. So I really
Yeah,
think it's XR. XR is where it's going to go. That it will blend. Because the reason I'm asking this is it's in two folds. It's like one of them
yeah,
is that I have a communication company that I'm changing into experiential marketing, but I want to be accessible. That's why I'm sponsoring stuff with Brent. Besides, I believe in what Brent is doing, but I also believe that I can raise his voice, and raise
yeah,
more awareness about it. So I'm catering to when I design my events, to make it more accessible, but it'll be XR. I'm not trying to like, I'm not in no competition with anyone. I just want to be able to build something that people of everyone can experience it. So if you're and even in America, in Florida, and the restaurants they gotta have some type of criteria. You gotta have, like, as far as there's gotta be a ramp, there's gotta be all different things. That I look at that too, because my girlfriend designs restaurants, and that's what she has to study and understand that part. So for
Sure.
me, I feel like, for 2023, I wanted to create events, but I want to be able to add that XR experience into it, because no one's gonna afford to get the whole VR glasses. I think XR is the key. You can use your phone, you can use your desktop and your tablet.
Yes. Yes, you got it, Tanya. And exactly, I was going to mention XR, because experiential reality is exactly that middle ground that I think we're all looking for. And I don't know if you saw the early videos of the new glasses that Google was kind of putting out there, and they did like a demo
Yes,
video
I remember those.
with real, but not the Google Glass, not the one from the early mid 2000s. I'm talking about the new ones. They look like thick black rimmed glasses, but they superimpose things like real time translation. Now, to my knowledge, they haven't been released yet. But imagine a world where you could be wearing glasses that look like standard glasses, and if somebody speaks to you in real time, if they're speaking in a language you don't understand, you can receive the translation of what they're saying superimposed over top of your dominant eye or whichever area of your space that you prefer, and it's happening in real time, and they're able to get the reverse of that as you're speaking to them if they're also wearing these glasses. So this is the type of use case where I think this technology is good. I'm always going to be a proponent of human connection. And where the metaverse fails is it is encouraging us to turn into NPCs, where we're all just a bunch of mindless drones, off in our own worlds, pretending to be people that we aren't. Whereas with XR, experiences, these are the opportunity for us to still be ourselves, be proud of who we are, while also having superpowers that we didn't have before, thanks to where we are with AI and with technology today. And so I am so excited about that, in addition to all the changes that are being made to the built environment to make sure that everyone can be included, just like you said with your friend who's a restaurateur or a bar owner or what have you, venue owner. That's where I make a lot of my bread and butter.
She's one of those people they hired to design the bars and restaurants.
Amazing. Hey, that's perfect. Having that information in advance and designing from an inclusivity lens is what's going to set her apart from other designers who are out there. It's not just about the way that it used to be, where, as long as you've got a ramp, that means that you're accessible. No, because when I call a restaurant and I say, "Are you accessible?" and they say yes, I say, "Well, to who?" Right? It really comes down to accessible to who, because that person, they may have walked into their establishment day in and day out, and they don't even remember that there's 3 little steps that they have to get in to get into the main door. And then, yes, once you're in the main area, the rest of the space is accessible, and they even have an accessible or universal design bathroom. But for some reason, they forgot, we have 3 steps to get up. Now, I'm a manual chair user, and I'm able to walk short distances. But what about my friends who have power wheelchairs that are 300 to 500 pounds, and they're not able to get up there and do that? That to me is a loss of dignity. And I think that where we need to go when it comes to accessibility is providing experience for people where they feel dignified, where they feel like they're wanted. No longer can we just accept being shuttered. And when it comes to the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, they often forget the last piece, which is the A, which is accessibility. So I've been, in my spaces, I've been encouraging people to start making the acronym IDEA: inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And because then you can also say in conversation, well, isn't that a great idea? And it truly is. Oftentimes, people with disabilities are some of the quietest voices that are out there in terms of minority groups. And yet we've been preaching for a lot of these accessibility benefits for decades. Prior to the pandemic, people with disabilities were saying that we wanted the ability to have remote work. And Tanya and Brent, I got to tell you, the number of clients I worked with that just said, remote work, that's just never going to be a possibility for us. Now, isn't it miraculous that about 2 weeks into the pandemic, most businesses figured out how to move remote? So it's terrible that it took a worldwide pandemic for people to get off their butts and actually do something about it. But if there's a silver lining in anything, it's that if you have the right people and the right motivation behind anything, then anything is possible.
I agree with you on that. I also want Brent. I have to ask. I just shared the video actually. Let me pin it to the net so this way. So I got this. So tell us a little bit about what is the Q principle?
Yes. Okay. So the Q principle stands for creatively utilize your best energy. It's an acronym I created that's really about creating authentic and meaningful connections with people. A lot of the times I would be in networking events and people would be like, how are you meeting the people that you're meeting? How are you doing the things you're doing? And at one point in my life, I said, I don't know. I just creatively utilize my best energy to get the most out of life and create situations that are mutually beneficial. And a number of times people said, really? What is that? Can you teach me how to do that? And I said, well, yeah, I guess I can. So really, it's just a system and a way of approaching situations where, as Gary Vaynerchuk would say, giving without expectation. Don't ever go into a situation where somebody will feel like you always have an ulterior motive to ask them to do something. Go in there and actually wear your heart on your sleeve a little bit. Offer your skill sets, your services, your abilities in a way that you're comfortable with, that allows somebody to say, hey, you know what? Marco did me a solid that one time, and I want to remember that. And the key to the Q principle is truly remembering those relationships and those people. Don't look at the people that you meet in your life as passive bystanders. But for example, when I go to a networking event, even if I have a very short conversation with somebody, if there's something that they said that was meaningful or impactful to me, or they say something like, I could really use an in with the video production industry, that's something that I'll remember. And what I do, I actually am such a nerd, Tanya, is that I have a Excel spreadsheet where I have it broken down by people's names, events, the day in which I met them, and then a note section where I can describe what we talked about. And the reason I do that is so that, for example, if someone says to me, oh yeah, I'm actually looking for interns in production, and then I remember a conversation that I had with somebody 6 months earlier where they said, you know what, I really am a talented videographer and I'm really looking to get involved in production. I can easily type in the words video production, remember that there was a guy named Danny that I met 5 years ago or 6 months ago who said he was interested in that, and how I can bridge the connection between those two individuals and help them to utilize their energy, what they bring into this world, to support each other. I think by being able to do that more and more in whatever methodology is comfortable for you is so, so important, because it reminds us that although we all have different experiences in life and different ways of connecting with each other, we're all human beings with unique, different talents and skills. And if we can start, stop activating ourselves into silos where we're just like, well, I'm only going to do it if it's what's in it for me. What's in it for me? It should be what's in it for us. By me being able to support you, understand how you can break down a challenge that you might be having in your life and give to you without expecting anything in return. I'm telling you, Tanya, 9 times out of 10, those people, I won't ask them a single favor, but they'll remember what I did for them and they'll come back to me. And it's proven to be massively successful for me throughout my life and my career, just by being a guy that people know they can count on.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. Everything you're saying, I'm loving it. Brent, the mic is yours, because I got more questions to ask, but I want Brent to ask a couple questions. And then we are recording everything. It's being live streamed to 5 Social Network. What I'm going to do is after this, we'll cut up some snippets and I'll send you some of them for your promo. But Brent, the mic is yours.
So, I want to learn more about your disability background and what made you become a disability consultant.
Well, that's actually an interesting question, because I was actually quite reluctant to talk about accessibility and disability related things, because I'm somewhat of a serial entrepreneur, Brent, and I wanted to be respected as an entrepreneur first when I built my business, and that my disability had nothing to do with me being a successful entrepreneur. And that's actually why when I started my business, I built it off of the back of the CUBE principle and teaching people how to make real authentic connections, because once social media was introduced into this world, people have gotten further and further detached from each other. And I wanted to get back to the basics of what it meant to connect with people. So I was doing speaking circuits and talking about authentic connections and making those really long-lasting friendships and relationships. And I remember, because of my transition away from the tech industry in 2010, during the 2008 to 2010 recession that was also worldwide, very similar to the pandemic, I lost my job in the game industry. And I could have been super, super devastated by this, but it was actually my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, who encouraged me and said, and she was actually, I think I shared this with you, Brent, she was so excited that I lost my job. I remember calling her and saying, honey, I lost my job in the game industry and I don't really know what I'm going to do. And she was jumping for joy on the other end of the phone. And I said, wait a minute, I just told you I lost my job. Why are you so excited about this? And she said, it's because I never felt that this is what you were meant to do. Sure, in the gaming environment, you can create virtual spaces that encourage accessibility and become more accessible for other people. But I think what you were really meant to do is light a fire in people. I think that you should be a professional speaker. And she knows that I used to be a bit of a poster child for the local charities and the national charities here and across Canada as a kid, but I've never once considered doing it professionally or for a living. And as luck would have it, in 2012, I was asked to give a TEDx talk on accessibility in the virtual environment and using technology to increase accessibility for people with disabilities with my partner, my business partner at the time, Sean Sibbett. And so he and I did this TED Talk, and in the audience of the TED Talk was an individual who worked for a communications company. And she said to me, oh my goodness, Marco, your take on accessibility and technology is so incredible. We need somebody like you on a project that we're working on that could light a fire in people, be a bit of a community builder. I said, oh yeah? And they said, yeah. I said, well, what's the project? And they said, well, it's this thing called Planet. And the client that we're working with, his name is Rick Hansen. Now, for those of you who are from the States, you might not know who Rick Hansen is. But Rick Hansen is actually a former Canadian Paralympian who's paraplegic. He became paraplegic when he was 14 years old in a trucking accident. And he, to date, has raised over $200 to $300 million for spinal cord injury research. Now, Rick Hansen was a bit of somebody that I looked up to my entire life. Now, I'm not paraplegic, but this is a guy that I literally had as a poster on my wall as a little boy. And I vowed if I could even make half the impact that Rick did when I was a kid, then I would be happy. Well, go figure that this person tells me that they're working with somebody I've idolized my entire life. And so I said, although I'm in my own business, I want to hear more about this project. So one thing led to another. I started working directly with Rick, somebody I've looked up to my entire life. And at an event that I was at with Rick later that year, he was on stage, and I'm used to seeing Rick speak in front of thousands of people, but I was never expecting this. At one point during his talk, which I've heard him give many times, he kind of paused and he says, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just mention one thing. There's a guy in the audience today that I look up to very much. I consider him a colleague, a peer, and his name's Marco Pasqua. And I got to tell you, I'm not getting any younger. I'm getting a little bit older, and I've done a lot of work since 1985 to raise awareness on accessibility. But it gives me hope to know that there are guys out there like Marco who I can pass the baton on to and really, really trust with the subject matter of accessibility, so that as I get older, there are future champions that are out there doing this. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever had an idol tell an audience of thousands of people that they believe that you're one of their peers, you say, sign me up, how can I get involved? And it was really with Rick's encouragement that I said I wanted to get involved in this space more. I didn't want to be pigeonholed previously about being a guy with a disability that talked about disability-related things. But now my mentor is telling me that he believes in me and that it's not token for me to talk about accessibility and disability as as somebody with a disability, but rather it's a level of lived experience that people can appreciate. And it's through that trusted circle that they could really want to know more about my experiences and how they can do better. And so with his encouragement, I took his accessibility certification program. I became certified as an accessibility professional. I was part of the Accessibility Standards Councils that helped to make his program a reality for other accessibility professionals. He now works with building designers and architects to make this program, the Rick Hansen Accessibility Foundation certification program, a worldwide name. And it's just been a wild ride and a wild journey. But I do everything from going into spaces and working with designers to look at the built environment, looking at their blueprints on how they can do better. And if you're doing it at the blueprint phase, you can save tens of thousands of dollars. And I also do things like disability awareness training sessions for the government of Canada, for private organizations, just pretty much anyone who's willing to have me come in and speak about how we can do better to ensure that we're being inclusive of all individuals within the disability community. And it's been a wild ride, and it all just started with one guy. Well, actually, I should say it started with my wife really believing in me, and with her encouragement, the rest of it kind of snowballed from there.
What an incredible story. Oh my gosh, bravo. Jeez. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an incredible thing, and I have a lot of gratitude. You know, I say a little bit of a gratitude prayer at the end of every day. This is no joke, you know, about how much I appreciate that I'm able to use my voice to support and help other people and to open the eyes of other people who may not understand. You have to remember, when people are ignorant towards people who have disabilities or of other minority groups, oftentimes it doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually bad people. It just means that they're literally the dictionary definition of ignorant, which is they don't understand. They've never had exposure or experience with somebody who's in your position. So instead of having a chip on your shoulder and taking an activist approach, which I really don't like, a majority of activists that are out there, all they do is to scream at the top of their lungs without providing solutions. Whereas an advocate is somebody who's out there who's able to identify, here's some real challenges that I face in my reality, in my existence, and here's how I would suggest that you can support me in making things better. So it's like that old adage of never come to your manager at work with just the problems, always come prepared with solutions at hand. And I take the approach of people that I've not met or just friends that I'm not acquainted with yet. And I want to get to know them. Now, obviously, after getting to know me, if they're still malicious, if they're still ignorant, or if they're mean in any way, then obviously I don't waste my time with people who aren't really willing to have an open and honest dialogue with me on how we can do better. And I also want to do better for them. I also want to make it clear that just because I have a disability doesn't mean that I'm a disability expert. Okay, so remember that. You know, I've been on panels where I've been mislabeled as a disability expert, and I'll actually say, well, hold on a second, hold on. I'm not a disability expert. I'm only an expert of being Marco Pasqua, who happens to have cerebral palsy. But I do have empathy and understandings for my friends from the blind community, from the deaf community, from those with cognitive challenges. And it's because of that that I'm willing to speak anecdotally about their experiences and stories without saying that I know exactly what it's like to go through what they go through. So when you are approaching anybody from any other different group that is different than you, remember to approach them with compassion and empathy, not sympathy. My goal is not for you to feel sorry for me. You know, I don't want you to feel sorry for me in my circumstance. I want you to empathize with me that I do things a little bit different than you. And if that means that we have to adjust, adapt, or accommodate in any way so that I can feel like I'm included, then great. But I also have to equally understand that there are certain activities that I'm just never going to be able to do, okay? You're not going to catch me on a construction site hauling 300 to 400 pound of bags of cement over my head or doing those types of jobs, because that's just not in the cards for me. And I think where a lot of people in the disability community get it wrong is they feel like they are entitled to a certain role, or they're entitled to this, that, the next thing. Nobody in this world is entitled to anything unless you earn it. I want that to be clear. Maybe that's because I'm from a generation that's a little bit different. You know, I was born in 1985, okay? So I'm the lost generation of Generation Y, which is not I don't consider myself a millennial. I consider myself that generation that understands the analog world that blended into the digital world. I was around, yes, ladies and gentlemen, before the internet was a thing, before social media was a thing. And I think that really gave me perspective. It gave me the understanding that there are going to be things in this world that I'm not able to do, and that's okay. But is there a way in which I can do things differently or work with people who have different skill sets than I do so that we can accomplish the same goals in those environments without me having to do the jobs that I would potentially lean on them to do, right? And I think that that's really the understanding. I'm seeing a lot of the younger generation, they don't stick around in jobs. They stay around maybe 3 to 6 months, and then they leave because they didn't get a promotion. So my next question is, did you earn that promotion? Did you do something that was different? Did you create an impact in anything that you do? And whether you have a disability or not, I want to encourage people to always look at ways that they can actually contribute to society. Because if you're not contributing and all you're doing is making people uncomfortable by yelling at them and not giving them solutions, you're not helping anyone. And you're particularly not helping yourself look a certain way in front of people and really showing your best colors.
So I wanted to ask you another. This was like into my mind. So, what were you like before when you were a little boy? What was your life like before all this happened to you? Because you're a celebrity. If you really think about it, I'm looking at all your stuff. You're a speaker. You speak at TEDx. So, what was your life like? Just tell us a little bit about that. And did you ever thought that you would be doing what you're doing today?
No, so my family is an interesting family. So I'm only first generation Canadian. My dad immigrated to Canada from Italy. And I think I have some of that immigrant mentality in me where I really want to, step outside of the status quo. So just imagine this, Tanya and Brent. I come from a family where, my dad's a hot-blooded Italian who's not afraid to speak his mind. And my mom worked for our local TELUS Mobility, which is our communications company here in British Columbia for 35 years. So my mom was quite the talker and my dad was quite the expresser. My dad was never really good and articulate with his words, but he certainly had the passion. Whereas my mom was much more reserved and dignified, but she could certainly talk your ear off. So imagine an environment where I'm living in an environment where I have a father who's an immigrant, who's come to Canada to make a better life for his family. And here I am being shown that hard work and dedication is how you create success in your reality because of my dad. My dad was a painter in the movie industry for almost 40 years. He helped with set design and set painting. He painted the sled. My dad's very proud of his work as a painter. He was the lead painter on the sled in the movie Elf. There. So now I'm forgetting the actor's name. Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell. So he's very proud of the work that he did. And so my dad being an artist and being someone who is, really, really passionate about art and about connection and connectivity. And my dad is also an athlete. He was a soccer player. In fact, he was really good when he was in Italy, so much so that he had the opportunity to play interprovincially and things like of this nature. So prior to my birth, my dad was so pumped because he was like, oh, I'm going to be able to have a son that's going to be able to get involved in sports like me and be very athletic and driven. And then when they discovered that I had cerebral palsy at 18 months and I wasn't walking normally or like everyone else, and I was commando crawling around the house, my parents could have easily just let that destroy their life. But instead of letting that destroy their life, they said, okay, what's next? What can we do to support our son, to make him strong, to make him the best version of himself? They always encouraged me. And so I said, you know what, Dad, I might not be able to get involved in soccer, but I can get involved in a number of other sports. So I got involved in track and field, horseback riding, weightlifting, swimming, and wheelchair basketball. And I did all of those things. And bless my parents, they got me to every single practice that I had to get to because they knew that infusion of team sport was going to help to shape the person that I would become, and that you can't just do things on your own, that you have to lean on other people in order to be truly successful. So that introduction to sport was probably the infant days of the Q principle, if I'm to be quite honest, is understanding that there are people around me that I rely on to get things done.
And, you know, my family's always had a fantastic sense of humor about everything. So they don't let things get down. And even though I had 13 surgeries as a kid, I spent the first 13 years of my life primarily in a hospital. Okay, but that gave me the advantage of only being around adults and very professional adults with very articulate vocabularies and lexicons, which allowed me to, you know, hone my skills as a speaker, because the abilities I did have when I was in a cast from my hip to my ankles. My last surgery was when I was 13 years old and I had both my legs broken in order to turn my feet outward so that I could stand up straight. And so I was in a cast for 2 months. Well, what do you do when you're in a cast for 2 months and you're bedridden? The only thing you can do, you talk to people, you tell jokes, you learn about people, you connect with people. And it's because of those circumstances that some people might consider, ooh, that's a downfall. That, wow, at the peak of your puberty, you had both of your legs broken in order to have your life be a little bit better. And you know what? Absolutely, I did. But it exposed me to an entirely different world, an entire world that surrounds with people, and understanding that we can't do this thing alone. And it's going to sound cheesy. I don't really care if it does, but everything we do in our lives is surrounded by love. Okay? No matter how much hate someone throws at you, remember that everything that we do in this life, people always ask me, wow, well, what's the meaning of life? I think the meaning of life is to learn. We're all here to have a lesson. If this is my lesson, then I'm ready to absorb every second of it. And if I'm able to make an impact today, you're only as good as the last person that remembers you, right? So you die twice in this world. You die once when you first pass away, and you die a second time when the last person who remembers you passes away, because they can no longer share your legacy. So every single day when I'm creating things and when I'm manifesting my reality, I think about how can I do better in this world. I'm human, so I have bad days too. I'm not trying to say that I'm always happy and that everything is always hunky-dory. It isn't, you know, some days you have shitty days. But if you can do things that improve other people's lives and know that that karma is real and it will come back to you, I'm telling you, everybody, stop looking at this as I'm doing these things by myself and I'm alone. And remember that we're all very similar after all, and that we're truly all connected. So I think that that's honestly, Tanya, what's inspired myself, actually, my entire life, is that since I was a little boy, my parents have reminded me how much we're all connected and how much you can't take life too seriously. You might have an educational moment or something that you can do to support somebody to learn something, but that doesn't mean you have to take life seriously every single second. And remember that levity is important, and that's just as much as part of the learning and the education and the journey as everything else.
I love that. And I had a feeling that, you know, just looking at your website and was studying your profile and everything that you do, I knew you must have had incredible parents who were just um, being part of your life, but also inspiring at the same time, and gave you that can-do attitude. And you're so right about being the immigrant, because I'm the first generation immigrant from Vietnam, and I'm telling you, you know, I remember going to college, having 3 jobs, going to college, paying everything in cash. I mean, like, it's just a different mentality. You know, you work hard, you give back, you help your community, great things to happen. And then I still believe that to this day. No matter what people tell me, I still believe that there are, like, if you work hard, you help others, you do things without asking nothing back in return, you are going to have fulfilling, and and success is really a matter of opinion, right? I always feel like success is opinion, because everybody thinks that they're not successful enough, or they're too successful, or they think that this, but it's all an opinion. It's all in us. So I love what you're
100%.
saying.
Oh, thank you, Tanya. And I got to say, you being in Florida, Florida is a hustler state, man. People in Florida, first of all, I love Florida. And people in Florida are hard workers, man. The people that are out there really doing, really working, not wanting to rest on their laurels, unless they're, of course, they're retirees. And that's a whole different subsect of people. But there's a lot of hard workers in Florida that are really trying to give back to the economy, really trying to build things back, especially you know, after the economic times that we've been facing lately, and we're still not out of them quite yet. I know people don't want to talk about a recession, but I'm seeing things that are very similar to what I saw in 2008 and 2010 when it comes to recession. And I think that if you can learn to adapt, if there's any message that I can deliver to anyone listening to this Twitter Spaces today, is learn adaptability. Never put your eggs into just one basket. understand that there is something to be said about multiple revenue streams. And maybe that's something that immigrants really have something to teach other people for. Is many immigrants that I've met are people who have multiple jobs, as you said, but it's because they like to diversify their income. They don't want to just have it be one stream of income. They want to be able to have multiple opportunities to be able to give back. And by being able to do that, it means that you're not reliant on that one stream. So, for example, if your industry gets cut off by a worldwide pandemic, that you're able to spin, do a 180 and then be able to go, okay, well, how can I do this? In 2020, when the pandemic hit, and I'm a guy who speaks on stages, nationally and internationally, I'm going, well, how am I supposed to do this? Well, instead of feeling sorry for myself, I said, I'm going to get a really good setup. I'm going to invest the money into a fantastic mic, a fantastic office setup for me so that I can do my presentations virtually. And I got to tell you, in the 3 years of the pandemic were the most successful years in the entire 10 years of my business. And it was because I was willing to be adaptable and not just say, well, I don't know, I've never done virtual or remote meetings before. No, forget that. You've never done that, but that means that you have an opportunity to be the best at it. You just have to put the time and energy into doing it. And we had so much extra time in the beginning to use YouTube as an educational tool that I was absorbing all the information I could about online streamers and bloggers and ways in which I could give back, and not just as a speaker, but I became a blog writer. I wrote for the Huffington Post for a little while, and I started to contribute and write messages about different, different aspects or different themes of things that I may not have touched on before that. So it's because of that stick-to-itiveness and that adaptability that I was able to make it through. And so anyone who's going through tough times right now, I want you to know that it's okay and that there is a way that you're going to be able to get through this, so long as you look at your social circle, who can help build you up, not tear you down. Focus on the people that, can sharpen you. As they say, steel sharpens steel, right? So get yourself around the people that are like you and can support you, but have different talents than you. And then shoot for the stars. Just do whatever you can to make a name for yourself, and do it with dignity and with pride. And I'm sure that you'll go somewhere. It's worked for me, so it has to work for other people.
Well, I'll have to say that Twitter Spaces has been a great tool for me, because if it wasn't for Twitter Spaces, I wouldn't have met Tanya and created a friendship with her. And also, I feel that Tanya helped the community out when she was a makeup artist, because that was something that she enjoyed doing, was helping out the community.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And Tanya, thanks for sharing a little bit more of your story and your background and kind of what drives you. I always look at ways in which I can expand my social circle to support people and the work that you're doing. I love that you're a change maker in the space that you're working in. And if there's anything that I can do to support you in the work that you're doing, I have to practice what I preach, right? So if there's anything that I can do to support you in the work that you're doing, really putting on a pedestal the great work of change makers like yourself, individuals that focus on what needs to be done, not necessarily where there are downfalls, but how can we help to fill any of those gaps where things have been missed? And how can we make the world a more inclusive and better place for everybody? People often think that I'm just doing these things for people with disabilities today, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm also preparing the world for when you're going to need these services when you're older and your eyesight doesn't work so well, or maybe your knees aren't working like they used to. And then you're certainly going to be grateful that there was somebody that was thinking of these adaptations and accommodations before you needed them, so that now the world is still that much more inclusive and accessible for you as well. So that's why I continue to do the work that I do. And it was actually within the last, I would say 4 months, that my wife joined me full time in the business doing accessibility consultation. She's also a Rick Hansen Foundation certified professional. She's in the accessibility space. She was the accessibility and universal design specialist for our entire city. And she left that post to work with me full time because we want to raise our daughter together. And I absolutely, like my father, I absolutely love my daughter to pieces.
She is my entire world. She's not even 2 years old yet, and she is, you won't be surprised by this, but she's an incredible communicator. We think we have quite a smarty on our hands because she's stringing together 5 and 7 word sentences. She's not even 2. And, she sees compassion and empathy and all the things that my wife and I put into our work. She even comes on job sites with us and meets the designers. She's able to run ahead of me to find the accessible door buttons and push the buttons. And then she looks back and says, "For daddy." We'll go into accessible bathrooms and she'll say, "Nice grab bars." So the fact that my daughter, who's not even 2, is able to see how you can create a world that is more understanding and empathetic of all people of all abilities is exactly what I could hope for. And I know, just like Rick said, I'm leaving a legacy, and I hope that it's one that is remembered.
I love what you just said. And you know what? And it didn't even dawn on me because I produced a show called Elder Care, Social Chat's Elder Care. And and then now you bringing that up as far as accessibility is concerned. I'm like thinking, God, there's like where I live, there's so many elderly people, but there's only one handicapped bathroom. Like when you go to a women's bath, there's only one. So like 80% of your customers are, retired, but not all of them are not, movable, but most of them are like, they need help to go to the bathroom. Like they need help to get in there. They need to but the fact that there are a lot of, just having this 1 hour, you just really opened my eyes. And I was thinking, wow, yeah, you're right about that. Because accessibility is not, when you think accessibility, you don't really think about elder care.
Right. No, you don't. And in fact, a lot of people who are elderly don't identify as being part of the disability community because they're stubborn and they never really considered themselves that way. But it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to know that you deserve the same dignity and equity as anyone else who's accessing these spaces, right?
So Brent, I think of all your guests, for Social Chats Magazine, I think Marco's the guy. This is I would love to feature you using this the audio for this, because this is like incredible what you're saying, and you're right, because a lot when you are older, you don't think about that. You don't think about oh, I'm not accessible, like I'm not one of those people. And it's like at the end of the day, yes, you are. I mean, I had just recently, I can't believe we're going to talk about this, but I want to mention this real quick, Brent. So I was caregiver for my mother-in-law. And so when she passed away, she had a lot of stuff left. And so I was thinking, and before I had to be a caregiver, I had my co-host for my Tuesday Social Chats Locals. We interviewed everybody in Miami. So she became a caregiver and then became homeless because it was just a lot for her to take care of both parents going to Alzheimer. And, we were talking about, then we started talking about the caregiving registry,
right.
for not just for elder care, for anything, even for COVID, when all these people were getting sick, I was thinking, if I had a caregiving registry, and if people didn't think caregiving is more of but more of just like when you get married, you have a registry. When you have a baby, you have a registry. You tell people what you need, right?
That's right.
Well, it would be nice to have a registry, because I gave my best friend a big gigantic bag of adult diapers. Her mom was like, "Oh my God, this is gold." I was like, "Really?"
Exactly. Right?
This is incredible. Thank you so much. I can't believe you gave me this. And I was thinking, the caregiver registry is so important. I think because then this way, it's not about begging for money, right? It's this is your friend. And if I see my friend is overworked, or if I see that my friend needs, is not feeling well, it'd be nice for me to and I have the money. Don't have a problem giving $25 to $50 in grocery delivered to them, send them a gift card.
Exactly. Absolutely. No, and that's the thing. Let's not create artificial barriers where they don't need to be, right? Let's put our pride to the side for a second and say, if there's something that we can do to offer to someone that's going to make life easier for them, absolutely do that. There is no room for pride when it comes to supporting people and helping them understand that you're doing this so that they can feel truly included. Right. And so I think that that's a fantastic idea. I think that personal support and care workers need to have more shout outs and more respect. I'm fortunate enough that I don't need the use of a personal care worker, but that doesn't necessarily mean that as I age, I'm not going to need other supports. Until that time, I'm going to continue to hustle, continue to do what I can, continue to make an impact and a difference in the ways that I can. And I'm just extremely grateful that you've asked me, Brent, to come on your show and talk about this a little bit, because honestly, this is something that I'm so passionate about.
I think Tanya was more excited was more excited than me.
Oh, well, that's
true.
great. That's great. It's been awesome to get to know both of you better. And as I said, that wasn't a false deal. If there's anything that I can do, I'm not mincing my words. I'm so happy to support you all in the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for giving me this hour to have a bit of a soapbox to express to the world how I feel, and how I feel that we can give back and do better as a society, and do better as a species, really.
Well,
I appreciate you, but do you have anything that's happening that you want to promote or anything before we close out the show? I wanted to at least clean up that part.
Well, no. So I have a bunch of different proposals and things that are out there as an accessibility consultant, which is working with the local provinces, the equivalent of states here in Canada. So my wife and I have our fingers crossed for us getting those proposals selected and included. And outside of that, I just have a bunch of private disability awareness trainings coming up for government departments and various private organizations. I don't have any live events that are open to the public that are coming up. We do have the Accessibility Professionals Networking Conference happening in Vancouver, which I'm the MC for, on March 1st and 2nd. So that is taking place. You can learn more about that by looking up the Accessibility Professionals Networking Conference online through the Rick Hansen Foundation, and you can get tickets for that. It's both in person and available virtually. I'm going to be emceeing that for the full 2 days. That's really, really exciting, and it's going to be a bunch of accessibility professionals like me, and ones that also have different disabilities that are in the space, all talking shop, all talking how we can improve the world and make it a better place. So I guess maybe that would be the one shout out I would give. And if people want to learn more about me and who I am and what I do, they can visit my website at marcopasqua.com. It's very simple. It's just myname.com, marcopasqua.com. And there you can be linked up to my various social channels, as well as my company with my wife, Meaningful Access Consulting.
So, Brent, I was so excited about this conference. So is there any way you can come back before the conference, like a week before, so we can do a space and promote it for you guys?
Yeah, sure. Why
that's
not?
What Social Chats does anyway. That's what all you do. I go to conferences a lot. I have media credentials, just like Brent. So what I do is I go and I social media the conference actually. But
Nice.
What I do is when I do virtual ones, I just write stuff, retweet it, just kind of like create a lot of buzz. But I'd love to to feature this conference and talk about it and have it on my channel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's connect another time where we can do that just before we do the conference. I'm really excited. The last time that we did it in person was in 2019, before the pandemic, and we're now bringing it back in person and virtual. And I'm really, really excited, to have all of these building designers and architects and professionals all under one roof, all under one space. Having really meaningful conversations. So I do encourage anyone who's interested in that or wants to learn about how they can become an accessibility professional themselves, that they go over to rickhansen.com and they check that out. And of course, Tanya, in the show notes later on, I'm sure that you can provide some of these details, or you can provide a tweet later on with some of these resources as well.
I'll add it to the description on YouTube because it's being live streamed right now. So when I'm done, I put all the keywords in, and then I run ads on it to get more view. But yeah, let us know. We'd love to promote it. Brent, the mic is yours, so you can do the closing thoughts.
Well, my closing thoughts are that disability is innovation, and a seat at the table is important for people with disabilities. And I will also, the other closing thought is, as a person with a disability, Tanya has been watching my journalism journey and has been watching me get a press credentials with news channels in Canada, and now have a press credential with CTV. As a person,
that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Disability.
Yeah, Brent, I'm super pumped for you, man. I'm elated that another person within the disability community is helping to make waves out there in the journalism
because
community. And
because we
yeah,
not only do we need to bring we need to bring more diversity to the newsroom.
I 100% agree with you. 100% agree. So absolutely, let's continue to do that. Tanya, Brent, thank you
Any
so much for having
Thank you
me
so
on
much.
this space.
closing thoughts, Marco?
Let's see here. Well, I would say know your value and know your values. Okay, so know the value that you bring into any circumstance, but know the values that you have, and don't let anyone try to manipulate you or change you to alter the values that you have at the core of who you are and what makes you a human being.
Thank you, Marco.
And I want to thank you for coming to my Disability Hour show on Twitter Spaces, Marco. And thank you, Tanya, for always for co-hosting. I hope you learned lots.
I did. I'm so like inspired actually and it gave me another viewpoint.
And would love to have you back so we can have a space about the conference and promote it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I look forward to getting back and the opportunity to be involved in that way. Sorry, my daughter just ran into the room.
No worries. We'll let you go. Bye, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Good night.